Today, we're going to take a look at a classically inspired dress watch with a dial that's pretty interesting. Something maybe a little bit reminiscent of Omega in the 60s. This is the new Ellum from Jack Mason, and it's quite a departure from their last few releases, which were all straight tool watches. Whereas this isn't. This is more Mad Men than Mad Max. It's a watch that's attempting to channel the streamlined elegance of that era, with a sleek 38mm case paired with an intricate linen-like dial and mechanical Salida movement. And before we get too far, I want to point out that the watch we're looking at is a prototype that was lent into the channel. And as far as I know, there aren't going to be any specific changes, but all your standard prototype warnings apply. That said, get ready for an information overload as we talk specs. For this one, Jack Mason is going with a 38 by 45mm case, with a total thickness of 9.5mm. So pretty thin, and that's partially thanks to the Salida SW210 mechanical movement, which is in a top grade spec with blued screws, which you can easily see with the wide exhibition case spec. Beautiful looking movement. Meanwhile, water resistance is a minimal 50 meters. Not surprising when you consider it's more of a thin dress watch. Otherwise, we got a lug width of 20, which may be a little wide for a 38mm case, but it does give you plenty of aftermarket strap options. There's also a beautiful box cut sapphire crystal, nice Epsom leather strap, and it weighs in right around 50 grams, practically nothing. And this one is also following Jack Mason's other recent offerings by being assembled in the USA with further regulation for the movement, aiming to get it within 5 seconds a day. And as I've said before, yes, you can do it yourself, yes, you can take it to someone and have them regulate it after you buy it, but it is nicer when it comes that way. One quick bit of trivia, just for those that don't know much about Jack Mason, but they are a microbrand based here out of Dallas, Texas, as am I, and Jack Mason's actually been around since 2015. Now, if you're familiar with Dallas or even Jack Mason, the name Ellum might ring a bell, as the watch is actually named after, and in a lot of ways inspired by the deep Ellum neighborhood here. Like a lot of areas, it's one that's had its ups and downs, but it is one that is rich in both artistic and musical history, which is what's helped inspire this watch. Now, this isn't the first watch they've created and named after the neighborhood. The very first Ellum was a simple 40mm quartz dress watch with a small seconds, and that version was actually a staple in their catalog for a while. Now, recently, Jack Mason has been pushing to be more of an enthusiast brand. And with this new version, it seems like they want to show how far they've come. By creating something complex and intricate, it still has a similar sleek, elegant feel. One with quite the presence. And this also brings up the topic of size. The Ellum has a larger presence than that 38mm would suggest. It still wears true to that, but visually it seems more like a 40. A lot of which is thanks to the sleek streamlined case, complete with a mostly polished finish, razor-thin chamfers, and short, thin lugs. It's a great looking case, but when you look at the watch as a whole, the dial and the beautiful box-cut crystal are really what grab you, as they're pretty large and expansive proportionally. So I think a lot of people are going to look at this and think that even 38 is too big for this design, that they should have gone smaller, like 36. And especially so if they're trying to channel that retro watch of the 60s feel, which I think is a very valid argument. However, I think why they kept this at 38 and why 38 is also a good idea is that it's a nice halfway point where it enables them to channel that 60s styling, but do so in a size that's more accessible to a modern audience, as well as perhaps give this one just a little bit more of a casual feel, giving the watch a little bit more versatility. Something I know I like in a dress watch, because I don't really need a dedicated dress watch. I'm not in a tux or a suit that often. So I'd rather have something that also looks good in jeans and a t-shirt. Now, one thing to also remember is that while Jack Mason is new to a lot of enthusiasts, they have been around for quite a while, and as such, they have their own established fan base. And I think 38 is a good size between where they were with that older 40mm Ellum and where they're now heading. So it does make sense to me, but even if it didn't, just remember that everything is bigger in Texas. That's just a fact. That said, let's focus in on the linen dial, which is inspired by some classic vintage Omegas, but it's not something you see a lot of these days. Which, to be clear, really isn't made of linen. It's just a stamped dial that simulates a look. And here, Jack Mason is really proud of it, as they stress that they had to go through a process of trial and error with a lot of prototypes just to get the right look, where it really looks like linen, with an inherent randomness to the pattern as well as depth, where it's not just two layers but many, where it really looks like strands of fabric interweaving over and under each other. Evidently, it's not easy to do. But whatever they wound up doing does look great here, especially with the curved or convex dial they put it onto, one where it's sloping downward as it goes to the outer edges. And it's not really something I'm sure the camera's picking up here, but it is something you notice in person. Then, on top of all of that, you have the angled, multifaceted wedge indices which are applied. And those also look great with a mixture of brushed and polished surfaces. And I especially like how the inward facing angle just seems to catch the light. And as a whole, when the entire dial does this, it really helps guide your eyes right to the center. Now, the hands here are also a little harder to catch on camera. They are flat and a little wide, and a bit more simpler than the rest of the dial. And perhaps too much so. Or maybe they just did this on purpose to not distract from the linen. But either way, they still look good and are easy to make out in natural light. It's just here they're reflecting the dark room behind me. Then, of course, you got the Texas style star at the top, Jack Mason's logo, as well as a very simple Ellum at the bottom, keeping most of the dial clean. Overall, I'd say it's a gorgeous looking, straightforward design, with that linen dial keeping things interesting. If you like what you're seeing here on camera, then you'll probably love it in person. However, I do have some comments and critiques that I want to point out here. First off, let's talk colorways. Jack Mason, at least at first, is only making two colorways of this watch. There's this green and gold version, and then an even more gold on gold option, complete with gold case. Now, while they both look great in their own ways, these aren't exactly two colorways that are going to appeal to everyone. Or maybe a better way to say it is that there's no normalish version out there. As not everyone is going to want a gold case, and not everyone wants a green dial. They're both sort of niche colorways, and I think that's going to really limit who wants it. Another thing is a secondhand color weight, that 3-color flag on the back. As it's rotating over the green and gold color scheme, I think it distracts a bit. However, I do give this one a bit of a pass, just because it's red, white, and blue for the Texas flag, as well as the US flag. And that really is part of Jack Mason's branding, their design language, so you can't really blame them for that. The third is the date wheel over at the right. Now, I know some are going to argue for a dateless design. I hear you. But I do like having a date on an everyday watch. And I think the date, as well as the size, makes the green one just a little bit more casual, and therefore more versatile. There's also the white date wheel it's using, which I think is a little bit distracting, but that's something I'm also going to give them a pass on, just because I'm not sure how you could color match a linen dial. Even if they made it green, I'm not sure it'd work better than the white. And lastly, there's the linen dial itself. It's mesmerizing to look at, and I think anyone who gets to see this one in person will probably say the same. But one thing to remember with this one is that linen effect diminishes the further away you get from the watch. Now, this isn't exactly a problem, but just something to remember. So don't expect it to have quite the same impact on the other side of the room as it does on your wrist. Let's talk about the strap, as it is listed as an Epsom calfskin, and I gotta say, it's really nice. In fact, it was actually one of the first things I noticed about the watch. Sometimes it's just like that with leather. Like whether it's car seats or a nice jacket or even a watch strap. Sometimes you just touch it and your first thought is, wow, that's nice. Or it has a combination of a great texture, flexibility, thickness, everything that makes a great leather strap. So in short, you'll like it. And you'll like how it wears on your wrist. I think this is one of the watch's biggest strengths. Lightweight, comfortable, and regardless of which colorway, I think it has quite the presence. Easily one you can wear all day, assuming you remember to wind it. In terms of price and value, MSRP here is $949 US. And if you look around at other watches with this movement, which aren't a ton, but they are around, I think that's right about where you'd expect to find this one. And I think that's before you even throw in the linen dial, the USA assembly, and further regulation, which as a whole, I think makes this a rather unique package. However, I also want to point out that if you like the idea behind this one, but not so much the price, know that there are a number of other watches out there that also channel that retro 50s and 60s spirit. Not so much in the microbrand sphere, but more the name brand. Some of which are more expensive, and some of which are more affordable. The Marlins and the Bambinos being the most obvious, even if they don't have near the same level of quality. But if you can think of other watches that have a similar design, let me know down below, and how you think they compare to this one. Bottom line, price may be steeper than you like, but still a really great watch. It's a beautiful, sleek dress watch with a lot of great intricate details, and especially the linen dial. I just wish they had a few more colorways, as not everyone's going to want one of these two. Not everyone likes green, and not everyone wants a gold case. And maybe in time they will. But in the meantime, if you do like what you're seeing, they are worth looking into, as I think it succeeds in channeling the understated elegance of those early classic pieces in something that I think will appeal to a modern enthusiast, all while still maintaining its own identity with a few distinct twists, or weaves, or whatever. It's linen. Now, as usual, let me know what you think about the watch down below, or if you can think of a watch that does it better for less, let me know that too. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, start over from the beginning. It really helps the channel. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.